Some people spend their entire lives chasing a feeling they can never quite reach. The feeling of being enough. No matter what they achieve. No matter how much they improve. No matter how many compliments they receive. There is always a quiet voice inside them whispering, "It's still not enough." They rarely say it out loud. In fact, many of them look confident, capable, even successful. But internally, they are constantly measuring themselves, comparing, correcting, improving, apologizing. They don't just want to do well. They want to be worthy. And the problem is, worthiness always feels just slightly out of reach. People who always feel not good enough often live in a quiet state of self-evaluation. Every mistake feels bigger. Every criticism lingers longer. Every failure confirms something they already feared. They may overthink conversations long after they end. Did I say something wrong? Did I sound stupid? Were they secretly judging me? Even neutral situations can feel like hidden tests. They tend to prepare more than necessary. Work harder than required. Apologize more than needed. Not because they are weak, but because somewhere along the way, they learned that love, approval, or safety had conditions. This pattern rarely begins in adulthood. It usually begins much earlier. Often in environments where affection was inconsistent. Where praise was rare. Where achievement was expected, not celebrated. Some grew up with highly critical caregivers. Others grew up with emotionally distant ones. In some households, mistakes were not treated as part of learning. They were treated as evidence of inadequacy. A child in that environment slowly begins to form a belief. If I perform well, I am safe. If I disappoint, I am at risk. Over time, performance becomes identity. And identity becomes fragile. Instead of developing a stable sense of self-worth, they develop conditional worth. I am valuable when I succeed. I am acceptable when I don't cause problems. I am lovable when I meet expectations. This creates an internal contract. One that is exhausting to maintain. Because expectations never truly end. As adults, this belief system becomes invisible, but powerful. They may become high achievers, perfectionists, people pleasers, the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who never asks for too much. But inside, there is tension. Because no achievement fully silences the original fear. The fear of being fundamentally flawed. Interestingly, many people who feel not good enough are extremely competent. But competence does not erase conditioning. If a person's self-concept was shaped around inadequacy, success can feel accidental. They may attribute accomplishments to luck, or timing, or external factors. But failures? Those feel personal. This is often connected to something psychologists call core beliefs. Deep, automatic assumptions about the self. Beliefs like, I am not smart enough. I am not attractive enough. I am not interesting enough. I am not worthy of consistent love. These beliefs operate quietly in the background. They filter experiences. If someone compliments them, they may deflect it. If someone criticizes them, it reinforces everything. Over time, they become highly sensitive to rejection. Not always visibly, but internally. A delayed text message can feel heavy. A change in tone can feel threatening. A small disagreement can feel like the beginning of abandonment. Because when someone already doubts their worth, any distance feels like confirmation. In relationships, this can create a painful dynamic. They may overgive, overcompromise, overfunction, trying to secure connection by being indispensable. Or they may withdraw emotionally, afraid that if someone sees too much of them, they will eventually leave. Some develop anxious attachment patterns, constantly scanning for signs of reassurance. Others develop avoidant tendencies, convincing themselves they don't need anyone. But underneath both patterns is the same question. If I stop trying so hard, will anyone stay? At work, they may struggle to feel satisfied. A promotion brings relief, but only temporarily. Soon, a new standard replaces the old one. Rest feels undeserved. Celebration feels premature. Because internally, they are still chasing the moment where they can finally say, "Now I am enough." But that moment never arrives. Not because they aren't capable, but because the standard was never realistic to begin with. It was emotional survival. And survival standards are infinite. Another subtle pattern appears in the way they relate to mistakes. For them, mistakes are not neutral events. They are reflections of identity. Spilling a drink becomes, "I'm so stupid." Missing a deadline becomes, "I always mess things up." For others, mistakes are behavioral. For them, mistakes are personal. This constant internal criticism creates mental fatigue. They may appear disciplined, but internally, they are harsh. The inner voice that drives them forward is rarely kind. It says, "You could have done better. Why are you like this? Other people are ahead." Comparison becomes automatic, especially in the age of social media. Every curated image becomes evidence that others are more confident, more accomplished, more stable. And so the gap widens between who they are and who they believe they must become to deserve peace. Ironically, people who feel not good enough are often deeply empathetic. Because they know what inadequacy feels like. They are careful with others' feelings, sensitive to exclusion, attuned to emotional shifts. But they struggle to extend that same compassion inward. Their standards for themselves are far higher than for anyone else. And sometimes, they don't even realize it, because it has been this way for so long. This internal dynamic can also affect decision-making. They may hesitate to pursue opportunities, not because they lack ability, but because they anticipate failure or exposure. Imposter syndrome becomes familiar. They wait to be found out, as if everyone else is confident and certain, and they are pretending. But most people around them would never guess. Because externally, they function well. They smile. They perform. They adapt. And this creates another layer of loneliness. When the outside image does not match the inside experience, they may receive praise for being strong, but they don't feel strong. They may be admired for being successful, but they don't feel secure. They may be loved, but they struggle to feel lovable. And so they keep trying, improving, refining, correcting, hoping that one day, the feeling will change. The truth is, feeling not good enough is rarely about actual ability. It is about early emotional calibration. If a child grows up feeling consistently seen, valued, and accepted, they internalize a stable sense of worth. But if validation was inconsistent, conditional, or absent, they internalize uncertainty. And uncertainty seeks proof. Proof that they matter. Proof that they are safe. Proof that they are not fundamentally flawed. But proof is addictive, because no amount of external validation can permanently fix an internal narrative, especially one formed before language. The interesting shift happens when awareness begins. When someone starts to recognize, this voice inside me is not objective truth. It is memory. It is conditioning. It is protection. At some point in their life, feeling not good enough may have motivated adaptation. Trying harder. Being quieter. Being more helpful. Being more impressive. It may have kept them safe. But what once protected them can quietly imprison them. Because the world has changed. They are no longer the child who needed to earn safety. They are no longer dependent on approval to survive. But the nervous system may not know that yet. And so it continues the pattern. Overworking. Overthinking. Overcorrecting. Trying to outrun a belief that was never fully examined. There is a quiet tragedy in constantly chasing enoughness. Because it prevents presence. It turns life into a test. Relationships into evaluations. Rest into guilt. But there is also something deeply human about it. The desire to matter. To belong. To be valued. Those are not weaknesses. They are universal needs. The difference lies in whether worth is seen as inherent or earned. For people who always feel not good enough, the shift does not begin with achievement. It begins with questioning the standard. Who decided what enough means? Who defined the measurement? And why has it remained unquestioned for so long? Sometimes the most powerful realization is not, I must become more, but rather, I learned to believe I wasn't enough. And learning can be unlearned. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually, through awareness, through noticing the inner voice without automatically believing it, through recognizing that worth is not performance-based. It is not productivity-based. It is not comparison-based. It is intrinsic. And perhaps the quietest form of healing begins when someone allows themselves to be imperfect, without interpreting it as proof of inadequacy. Because enoughness was never something to achieve. It was something that was always there. It was just buried under years of conditions. And the moment someone begins to see that, the chase slowly loses its urgency. Not because they stop growing, but because growth no longer feels like survival. It becomes choice. And that changes everything.